Hello, my beautiful friends. It's Amanda here, and today we're talking about the latest ColourPop release. This is the Wish You Were Here collection. It is currently available on the ColourPop site. The day that I am making this entire video, the day that this arrived to me is Friday, July 7th, which means that this launched yesterday on the ColourPop website on the 6th. Hopefully I'll be able to get this video done in its entirety for you today. So these products are currently available on the ColourPop site, and they will be available at Target on the 9th. So at least I'll get this up before the Target launch. And according to the ColourPop Instagram, they did say on their post that this entire collection is limited edition. So if there's anything here that really grabs your attention, you feel like you really want, this is not one to wait on. I'm not a big fan of FOMO. I'm not a big fan of rushing to buy things, but they did say it's limited edition, so just keep that in mind. If you decide to shop on the ColourPop site, you can use my affiliate code. It's just my first name, Amanda, and you will save 10% on most things on the ColourPop site. Keep in mind that sets and bundles are excluded from ColourPop codes. Unfortunately, that is a new thing that they've just changed in the past few months, so I know it stinks, but you get a discount either way. And if you want to support your favorite creators, not just me, but anybody who you want to support, you can always use their links. And then we do get an affiliate commission from that, even on the sets and stuff. So just keep that in mind. If there's anybody that you really want to help out, it doesn't really cost anything extra, but I appreciate it. I know that my peers, my fellow content creators really appreciate it too. And thank you to everybody who does decide to use my code, shop my links. It really helps keep this channel going, and I genuinely appreciate it. And I know I speak on behalf of my other YouTube friends, Instagram friends. We all really appreciate it. It makes a big difference to us. Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm rambling. I'm going to move on really quickly. First, I just want to point something out to you. The photos on the ColourPop website of this collection are pretty misleading. I do find that their photos tend to be pretty overexposed, pretty oversaturated, but these are so saturated. They don't even look like the palettes at all. The other products are similarly oversaturated in their photography, but I feel like the palettes are the worst. So just be aware of that when you're shopping on the site. I in no way mean to be disrespectful towards their team. I'm sure that they have incredibly talented, skilled, wonderful photographers and editors, but just know this is not what these look like, okay? You need to be aware if you're going to spend your money on these things. All right, enough of that. Sorry about the little mini rant there, but as somebody who photographs and swatches products, it just you need to know. Anyway, let's talk about the products now in this collection. First up, we have a couple of Fourth Ray lip care products. We have a lip scrub and a lip mask. Both are strawberry scented. They smell so good. They are very fragrant, so if you're not into that, then just be aware. These are very sweet, very fruity. I love the way they smell. I'm into scented, fragranced makeup, so it is a bonus for me, not a downside, but just be aware. The lip scrub is $8, and it has a very fine scrub grain in here. It is very comfortable. It obviously has a little bit of grit to it because it is a scrub, but I don't find it to be chunky and abrasive and terrible. And their lip mask is one of my favorite lip products, probably close in line behind my beloved Laneige Lip Glowy Balm. I do use these masks up quite frequently. So the mask is $10. It's just really rich and great for dry lips. We also have a Soul Body product. This is the Shimmering Dry Oil in the shade Soft Gold. This is priced at $10 just for the mini bottle here. And there's no special packaging on the bottle. It's just on the outer carton. This is a very liquidy product. I will do a live application on the back of my hand so that you can see, but you can tell in the bottle already this is pretty runny. You definitely need to, use in a controlled environment. And this has a very fragrant coconut oil type of scent. It's just like their other Soul body oils if you've ever used them. Now let's get into the ColourPop, the makeup products. We have 4 pressed powder highlighters. These are priced at $12 each, and we are going to see special packaging on the outer carton as well as on the compacts themselves. Here's a look at the 4 highlighters. I do think these look more different in the pan and more similar in swatch. That could just be how these particular shades are performing on my own personal skin tone, but I do think that you can see a lot more variation in the tones when they are actually pressed into a pan. Maybe you can kind of tell with these two, they're going to end up looking similar. These are a pressed powder highlighter. These are not the Super Shock formula. These are not glittery at all. They definitely have that soft, pearly, metallic type of finish. And you see what I mean here in the swatches? Like the 2 groupings look pretty similar on me. Again, if you have a deeper skin tone, maybe these will look a little different, but to me, a little too close in my opinion. Now we also have 4 pressed powder blushes. These are also $12 each, and these do have a different packaging style on the boxes and on the compacts. The blushes have these stars. The highlighters had like little hearts and stars. So they look similar at first glance, but when you see them side by side, you can tell the coloring is different and the design is different between the highlighters and the blushes, but it's definitely still very cohesive. I think you just have to really pick them apart side by side to truly tell the difference. The 4 blushes, I think we get a little bit more variety in depth. Now they all still have a very warm kind of pinky peach tone to them, but these do look more varied on my skin tone anyway. These are all a pearlized finish, so they all have a shimmery finish. No matte blushes here, no glittery blushes, no overspray. These have a very similar type of feel and finish to the highlighters, just not quite as metallic and glowy, but I do think these will work really well together. And I love a glowy cheek. I love a casually sweaty cheek. So the blushes are actually my favorite thing in this entire collection. Usually I am a palette girl, but these blushes are by far my favorite thing in this collection. Overall, I like everything. I think everything's nice, but the blushes are the standout. I also think that these ultra blotted lips are really nice. These are $9 each, and this is the new formulation. We have new packaging, and I really like the newly reformulated ultra blotted lips. The ones before were too dry. They looked pretty gross on me personally. I have dry skin, I have dry lips, and the old ultra blotted lips just really emphasized that dryness and that texture. But this new formula has a little bit more moisture, and I think it's a little bit more flattering. So I also really like the ultra blotted lips. I do think that these again are maybe a little bit too similar. You may have a different experience based on your undertone and your skin tone, but when you see these swatched on my arm, see there's just not a huge variety. I think Jet Setter is the most different. The other 3, you probably only need one of those because they do read pretty similarly on the lips. Running Late is a little bit more orangey based, but overall I think, especially in this blotted formula, pretty much only need 1 or 2 of these. Now let's get into the palettes. We have 3 new 9-pan palettes in this collection. These are in the plastic packaging. The Target palettes are going to have the clear lids so that you can see them when they're actually on the shelf in a retail store, which means no mirror, no cardboard packaging. I personally prefer the cardboard packaging, but that's just one gal's opinion. Let's look at this Daydreaming palette. This is the kind of mauve-y, cool toned type of palette. I think this one is the most different from the pictures on the website. It makes it look like there's a peach shade in here. There's definitely no peach in here. There is no green in here. This is a neutrally mauve with a little bit of purple and, you know, that blue-brown duochrome that they love to put in palettes when they do a duochrome. That's what Daydreaming has. No eye safety warnings on this palette, and we have 3 true shimmers, 4 true mattes, and then 2 mattes with glitter. Each one of these palettes, you will see both finger and brush swatches. Finger swatches are pictured on top, and then the corresponding brush swatch is below. These are done with a dry brush. There's no primer, no dampened brush, nothing like that. Just the shadows straight onto my skin. Now, I am going to show you 4 palette comparisons for each one of these palettes. I know I could come up with at least 2 or 3 times as many more, but the swatch arm can only take so much, and I really, really want to get this video done today. So I'm just going to do 4 comparisons per palette, starting with this extra coin palette, which was actually a lot closer than I expected. This was from their holiday vault at the end of last year. And this is a follower request from Instagram, the Making Mauves palette. These are also way more similar than I expected. I thought Making Mauves was going to be quite a bit warmer, but these are both on the neutral undertone spectrum. I would not call either one of these palettes cool toned personally. Now, anytime we talk about mauve palette comparisons, we've got to talk about the Flutterby palette, and this is pretty decent comparison. We are lacking a couple of the key shades, like that duochrome in the middle, the more grayish shade, and also that darkest purple, the really, really glittery matte purple with a ton of silver glitters in it. Last comparison for this palette, one of my favorite ColourPop palettes, the Troublemaker palette, which you can see here, not a ton of overlap. I mean, there are some similar shades, but Troublemaker is definitely giving more variety in depth. And it also has a lot more truly cool toned colors, whereas Daydreaming is like just dabbling in neutral undertones. Next up, we have the Feels palette. This, I guess, will be described as the green palette. It truly only has one green shade, but it does have green on the packaging. So I guess we can think of it as the green palette, but I think that that packaging will just trick the eye into believing that this is green. Maybe you could make an argument for the shade Mossy being like a green gray. It definitely just looks gray when it's in use. In swatch, you can tell that it has that green sort of undertone. In the pan, it looks very much like a brown gray. So I suppose an argument could be made that there are 2 greens in this palette, but to me, it really only seems like that one center shimmer shade is a green. You're just gonna have to follow your own heart on that one. This palette has 4 shimmer shades, 4 true mattes, and then that very first lightest shade is a matte with some glitters. Again, no eye safety warnings, no pressed glitters, no super shock shadows in this palette either. For comparisons, I started off with the Sage the Day palette. This is another neutrals plus greens palette, but Sage the Day just has a lot more obvious green shades. Definitely some similar vibes. Not the exact same eye looks coming out of these 2 palettes, but same vibes, same idea. These would be good companion palettes to use together as well. This is the first one that came to my mind. She's Got Solstice. This is an Ulta release from a couple years ago, and She's Got Solstice is definitely more of a peachy, more colorful on the neutrals, but this is again very similar vibes. I could see these working well in tandem with one another. The Feels is just She's Got Solstice, more toned down younger sister, I guess. Next up we have Wild Nothing, which is Honestly, a lot more similar than I expected. Wild Nothing does not have a lot in the way of deeper shades, so that's really where it diverges from the feels. But again, these would be good companion palettes if you need something to deepen up your Wild Nothing palette. And the last and probably the best comparison is the Gettin' Fresh Mega Palette. These are pretty much dupes. If you have Gettin' Fresh, you have all of these shades and you have them in a better formula, because I do think that the Mega palettes for sure outperform these little 9-pan palettes that are coming out. They do tend to be pretty hit or miss when it comes to the Target releases. That is just my opinion, but I've seen a lot of other people feeling the same way. When it comes to performance, I do think that this Weekend Mood palette is the least impressive of the three. It's also the least impressive as far as color story goes. This is like a little peachy neutral palette. They have done a bunch of different iterations of this color story. This is the one that I could have gone on and on and on with comparisons, but I think that you kind of get the point that this is a peachy neutral palette. If you have a peachy neutral palette, it is probably pretty similar to the Weekend Mood palette. Obviously, no judgment from me if you double buy certain shades because you love them and you're attracted to them. I'm the last person to judge, but just so you know, this is pretty dupable within the ColourPop line and probably a lot of other brands as well. The Weekend Mood palette has 3 true shimmers, 4 true mattes, 1 matte with glitter, and then one of their pearlescent glitter shades. It's just those little teeny tiny micro glitters. They're not doing the big chunky glitters anymore, which I am personally glad about, but this one does have the glitteriest shade of any of the 3 palettes. Now let's compare it to first this Peach Out palette. It pretty similar. I mean, this is going to be a trend. Obviously, every single shade is not exactly the same, but you are for sure going to be getting a lot of the same looks out of these 2 palettes, and they will just get more and more similar as the comparisons go on, at least in my opinion. The Sweet Talk palette is the ultimate peach palette as far as ColourPop cult favorites go. And Sweet Talk is maybe a little bit warmer when you look at the 3rd and the 9th shades, but overall, pretty close. You are going to be getting the same looks out of these 2 palettes. Same thing goes for the Gettin' Fresh palette. This was kind of the hero mega palette of this week's comparisons. Some shades are a little tiny bit different here and there, but overall, very close dupes. And I feel the same way about the final palette comparison that we're going to do. Another follower submitted request. This is the Smokin' Hot palette, their most recent mega palette. And again, these are pretty much exactly the same. So if you have the Smokin' Hot Mega Palette, then you definitely have these shades, and frankly, you have a better formula version of these shades. In my opinion, the Megas are smoother, more pigmented, and easier to work with, at least compared to these new 9-pan palettes. Personally, my top pick from this collection, like I said, are the blushes. I also really like the Strawberry Lip Mask. And as far as the lips go, the shade Jet Setter is my favorite, and the Daydreaming palette is my favorite of the 3. I don't particularly love any of the palettes, but if I had to pick one favorite, I would pick the Daydreaming palette. But if these are colors that interest you, I would say just get the Troublemaker palette and the Gettin' Fresh palette, and you have a more interesting and higher performing formula-wise version of these color stories. That's just one gal's opinion though. I always love to hear what you think about things too. So let me know all your thoughts on this collection down in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye. Okay, love your face. Bye.